We usually assume that science and religion operate in separate, opposing spheres. We place the laboratory on one side of a strict dividing line and the place of worship on the other. Yet 1400 years ago, a movement began that merged these two worlds into a single search for truth. The context is essential here. The society of 7th century Arabia was deep in an era known as Jahiliyyah, a period of widespread ignorance characterized by blind, unquestioning adherence to the traditions of previous generations. Against this backdrop, the Prophet Muhammad retreated into isolation inside a mountain cave, seeking clarity. There, he received his first divine revelation. The initial instruction given to him was not a demand to establish a new ritual, build a temple, or prepare for war. The single, surprising first command of the Islamic faith was Iqra, a word that translates simply to read. This command to read would eventually expand through the Prophet's teachings into a sacred obligation for every Muslim. But it immediately raises a practical question. What exactly is the believer supposed to read? To understand this, we look at ilm, the Islamic concept of knowledge. It implies an active, cognitive engagement with reality, rather than a passive collection of facts. The first dimension of this command to read is known as kulliyah. This is the direct study of the written revelations and scripture. This diagram outlines the 11th century philosopher Al-Ghazali's classification of knowledge. A primary pillar called fard ayn represents the strict individual obligation to learn. It encompasses the absolute essentials to function spiritually, understanding the core creed, daily prayers, and basic everyday ethics. Without mastering this foundational information, an individual cannot properly navigate their own personal faith or relationship with the divine. Yet, studying the scripture only satisfies half of the divine equation. Throughout the Quran, believers are explicitly commanded to observe and study physical phenomena, to track the sun and moon, investigate human biology, and analyze historical ruins. This introduces the concept of kauniyah. It treats the physical universe itself, from a flawless biological cell to a collapsing star, as a massive book of implicit verses that humans are commanded to read. Under this framework, mapping out a physics equation, practicing medicine, or engineering a bridge are literal acts of interpreting God's physical creation. Returning to our diagram, we see the other half of Al-Ghazali's framework, fard kifaya, the communal obligation to master worldly sciences. For a society to thrive, a portion of the population must master fields like civil infrastructure, agriculture, and governance. This means a researcher working in a laboratory to isolate a virus is directly fulfilling a divine mandate on behalf of their entire community. The scientist holding a microscope and the religious scholar analyzing a text exist on entirely equal spiritual footing. Islamic civilization engineered a societal structure where the aggressive pursuit of hard science was an absolute requirement for religious compliance. According to a well-known prophetic tradition, on the Day of Judgment, the physical ink used by scholars will be weighed directly against the blood of martyrs, and the ink will prove heavier. The theological weight assigned to intellectualism is immense, with classical texts asserting that angels literally lower their wings in approval for anyone seeking knowledge. This gives rise to the principle of scientia sacra, or sacred science. It posits that all beneficial knowledge is inherently divine, because God is all-alim, the all-knowing. Because of this specific attribute, the divide between secular and sacred study vanishes in Islam, provided the student's intention is to benefit humanity. The ultimate goal of accumulating these facts and figures is ma'rifah, a profound gnosis and awareness of the divine. That deep understanding serves as the only real defense against societal ignorance. In this worldview, the laboratory and the library represent an extension of the sacred. They are spaces where the human mind decodes the divine signature, mirroring the spiritual focus traditionally found within the mosque.